Thanks so much for being here. First of all, I just want to say I'm such an admirer of Lynn's work, and I'd seen her films over the years at Sundance, but I had the unique pleasure before interviewing her of watching all the films back to back. And one of the things that I picked up on, two things I picked up on. One is that I love the idea that people are keeping secrets, and we in the audience know that. So it builds in, even though there's an ordinariness on what we're seeing, the tension in all of the scenes. We know, like just with Keira Knightley and everyone, we know that their circumstances, the backstory, and so it creates a tension, which I really like. It's about people sort of suppressing their emotional desires. That's something that I see again and again. And finally, just in mentioning the Trailblazing Women series, one of the most things that I admire about Lynn is that you have been able to amass a body of work. For a female director, that's the most important thing, that you've been able to work in television and you've been able to have a successful career directing your film. So I really applaud that. So fantastic.
Thanks.
It's great. And the first thing I want to say is just, what does it feel like? We were laughing. We were sitting there laughing. And what is it? Is it like watching a home movie, or how does it feel
Yeah,
watching all your movies?
It's fun to see them all, little bits of them all back to back like that. I mean, 2009 was a while ago, so I haven't seen Hump Day in quite some time. And yeah, it's like revisiting old friends, and it's so nice. I started in the theater, and there's something so beautiful about the theater and how ephemeral it is, and how it's just there in the moment, and every night is different depending on your audience. And when I started making films, it was just such a wonderful thing to be able to you have this relic of your work. It's like, and people discover it. I have people writing to me weekly now that Your Sister and Touchy Feely are on Netflix streaming. And as soon as they go to Netflix streaming, like all of a sudden a whole new audience opens up and people see it, and they reach out and say, oh my gosh, this film is so great, even though it's years and years old. So it's a really special thing,
And do you
able to go
think
back
of
and
the
revisit.
movies in a sense as a trilogy? Maybe it's because I've watched them all, but they seem to all, work as a trilogy in a sense.
Which ones?
Laggies and Hump Day and Your Sister have I guess maybe part of it is because sometimes, the same actors appear in them too.
Yeah, that's true. Mark Duplass is in Hump Day, and Your Sister Rosemary is she's not in Laggies, but she's in Touchy Feely, and Your Sister. I do like working with actors again sometimes, but no, I don't think of them as a trilogy. I actually, Laggies was a way. My very first film was called narrative feature film was called We Go Way Back, and it just became available to view finally. 10-year-old film on Fandor, and it'll be more widely available in the new year. And I was sort of wanted to revisit some of the territory that I was exploring in that first film. And Laggies kind of gave the opportunity, because there's a relationship between a 20-something woman and somebody in their teens. And in We Go Way Back, it was two selves. It was this 23-year-old woman and her actual 13-year-old self. And there's a little turn of magic realism, and they end up being physically together. And for a while, there was an idea that it would just be a proxy. It wouldn't be her actual 13-year-old self. It would be, a Chloe Moretz. It would be like a, some neighbor or cousin or somebody sort of came into her life and reminded her of herself or whatever. And Laggies was sort of like, oh, this is like a whole other way that I could have made that first film. So I see those two, there are connections between different films, but yeah, I don't see them as a trilogy so much.
We were talking about this backstage in the show that I just did, the Trailblazing Women. We showed about 60 films, and some women directors wanted to specifically be identified as, I'm a female director. Ava DuVernay said that's my gaze is a female director. Some female directors said, just look at my work. I'm a director. I'm not, and I was wondering where you weighed in on that.
Well, I mean, I guess I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, I am a woman, so I don't have any problem. It's not I don't feel like I need to be George Sand and like hide behind I don't have to pretend to be a guy or something. I don't know. The weirdest question I ever get asked is, what does it feel like to be a woman director?
Well,
I have nothing to compare it to. I have no idea what it feels like to be a male director, so I don't know. It feels like me directing. I don't know. But I don't have any problem with it, and I do recognize it did, although I have to admit it took me a while, because I think because I live in Seattle and I've made all my movies up there and in this sort of regional wonderland of a very progressive place and time, and there are a lot of very strong female. It's a very female, I would say, almost driven industry up there. Producers and directors, who are women, make up at least half of the the sort of the force up there of creativity. And so, if you're a male DP, for instance, and you have a problem with women in authority, you're not going to work, I mean, it's just, so there's a lot of, everybody it's a very sort of feminist environment in general, whether you're a guy or a gal. And I never really appreciated that, because I never really felt like I had any obstacles in that micro budget, pick up a camera with your friends and go out and make a movie. I never really, in that realm, I never felt like I had any obstacles as a woman or a new filmmaker or anything. And I was on a panel in a regional film festival in the South. It was either Indie Memphis or it was Sidewalk, which is in Birmingham, Alabama. And I think it was Sidewalk. And there were a couple of women, Southern filmmakers, and they had these horror stories about, how this one woman said she had to just transform herself into a raging bitch, basically, to get any respect. Because the crew she worked with were these guys who just wouldn't give, just was like, you little girl, like, we're not going to listen to you. And it was so mortifying and it made me really realize, okay, I understand that question more, like, what does it feel like to be a woman filmmaker? She knew, what that meant, because she saw her male counterparts not having the same problems. And so I feel incredibly grateful that I never felt that, I never felt being a woman was a hindrance. And there was one really quick story at another film festival. We went, my friend Barry Jenkins and I, who's an African-American filmmaker, we had films at this festival in Boston, and we went to a shorts festival, a shorts program. There were like 10 or 12 shorts, and all the filmmakers were there. And we're in the audience, and afterwards they all come up, and they were all between 22 and 27, and they were all white, and they were all men. And it was somehow about seeing the sort of sea of them. We like looked at each other and were like, oh, that's why people like make a big deal out of the fact that we're here too. It really hit home, because I didn't really understand the context before, and it was just sort of seeing it visually was like, oh, okay. So in that, it makes me feel like acknowledging the diversity issue it's important. It's really important, And Ava saying that this is my gaze. I'm African American and I'm female, and that is my specific perspective that I come to the world, And I totally get that.
Well, I mean, I'm going to digress just for a second, because I don't think somebody like Barry Levinson ever apologizes for the fact that he makes movies about guys in Baltimore, but oftentimes it feels like a woman has to apologize because they want to do female-driven stories. I don't find your movies to be particularly female-driven. They're well-rounded. Everybody's well-rounded.
Yeah, I'm like, I steal this from Mike Lee, the British director who makes some really beautiful roles for women and is asked, what is that about? And he's just like, I'm interested in people. And that's totally what I love writing for men, but I love writing for women too. And I'm becoming more aware that, there's less female protagonists of the world, and I'm sort of feeling like I should focus more, in that direction, but just because of the dearth, But I love working with, I'm fascinated endlessly by humans, so, yeah.
Well, as I was saying backstage, women do shoot better sex scenes, so I always...
She should know. She's seen
I've seen 60 films, so... And your films too. I don't know. It's just the kissing. It's just always, women take longer in real life, and they take longer There's sex scenes in the movies, I think.
Although I think the sex scene
luxuriate.
in Your Sister is about 37 seconds long. It clocks in very quickly.
But it feels very real, again, it just has a quality. They're leading up. No, actually, see, I'm going to disagree with you because I think that the courtship of them at the kitchen table, it begins there.
That's true.
So
Yeah,
that's very, again, that's
Verbal
a very
foreplay, yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of maybe if you're, I'm here, you're here. That's why I say there's always something underneath, and each of them has a secret that the other one doesn't know about, and so again, there's that underlying tension that I really appreciate. Now, I do have to get into, because this to me is fascinating, that I thought it was only one of your films was remade by the French, but two of your films, Hump Day was remade by a male director, and Your Sister's Sister has now been remade by a female director. So I'm just going to throw that to you. What's that like?
It's surreal. There aren't a lot of American films that have been remade in French. Lots in the other direction, but not a lot in this direction. So I was thinking maybe I should just go to Paris and make my next film. We skip the interim step. But I got to see it Friday in Seattle as part of, there's a French cinema series put on by the Seattle International Film Festival, and they brought the woman who directed the remake, a terrible, I'm sorry, but it's true, Marianne, it's a terrible name. The U.S. title of the French remake of Your Sister Sister is Half Sister Full Love.
Whoa!
I'm sorry, it's just terrible.
That's French.
The French title is Et ta sœur, which is and your sister, which is, I guess, an expression, like an idiom, an idiomatic expression in French, and she didn't feel like it translated to English, so she came up with this other title. But anyway, but it was, I saw the world premiere of it. It hadn't screened anywhere theatrically before, and it's going to be released in France in January. I'm not sure if it'll get a U.S. release or not, but it was delightful, and it was just so, I really loved it, and it was fascinating to see it after having seen the French remake of Hump Day, which was more puzzling to me, some of the choices that he made, and it seemed, and he kept saying, we became friends, Yvan Attal is the writer-director, and we became friends during the process of it, and he was very, very sweet to me, and said, oh, you must be so nervous about what I will do with your baby. I was like, no, it's incredible. It's amazing. He was very sweet. But he said, well, some of the change, I'm making little changes here and there, and some of them, it's because it's French. That's the French version has to be this way and this way, But when I saw it, it was like, I think it's because you're a guy. Some of the changes you're making are distinctly male. So it was really interesting to see the male version, and again, I have to say, Marianne Verneuil is her name, who made the French remake of Your Sister's Sister, and hers was just, it felt like it really caught the vibe of the original, but she staked her own claim on the territory and, made some divergences in the way that she told some parts of the story, but it was, I don't know, it was like a lovely companion piece or sister or something to the original. So anyway, it's absolutely fascinating, lab experiment to see.
Did he say what was the thing that inspired him to want to remake the movie?
Well, he thought that he really seemed to be a fan of the original in general, and he was very nervous about, how was he going to do justice to it and stuff. But it was like he saw it through a clearly when I saw his vision of it, it was, I don't know, it was like he saw it in a really different way. So I don't know. He was also he co-starred in it. It was Francois Cluzet and he. So that probably had an effect on how, you directed as well.
Now I want to see it.
Yeah, it's called Do Not Disturb. In French too.
Now I wanted to get a little bit into just because I'm always fascinated, the process of filmmaking. One of the things I love about all your movies, since they're all in Seattle, is that Seattle very much is a character in the film. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about, is that true or?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, part of it's funny. part of the reason that I set my films in Seattle is because I know it so well. I grew up there, and I lived in the 90s. I lived in for almost 10 years in New York. But I always knew I was going to put down roots back in Seattle. And when I was pregnant, very pregnant, I was able to drag my husband back and settle down. And he just, or my kid is about to turn 17. So we've been back for a while. But you know, when I'm writing, it's really funny. I mean, I know each neighborhood and so many little streets and the character of each of the areas, you know, both sort of geographically but also kind of culturally, you know. And so it's a way to really fill the character out for me. Where do they live? Where did they grow up? You know, what part of the city? It's almost, you know, I think about John Sayles, who goes to a different region and gets to know it and lives there and really, you know, explores it. And I'm sure I'll do that someday, maybe, but it's so much easier when I already know, like I really know the region. And I'm very city proud. I love that region of the world so much, and I really do have this desire to share it, you know. And you know, you see a lot of films set in Seattle that are actually shot in Vancouver. A lot of films, even like a film that was shot there, like Say Anything is an example, where there's a montage of John Cusack running, and he goes, you know, every clip is in a completely different neighborhood all around, you know, some aren't even in Seattle. And as a local, it's just like, so aggravating, because you know he couldn't have gone from Ballard to Greenwood to, you know, Kirkland or whatever. And so there's this funny desire from childhood that I have to like remedy that, you know, and to like make everything really geographically specific. And no, if she's going to get from downtown to this place, she's going to go over this bridge, and, you know, it's really goofy. But I do think it lends a specificity, you know, and to the characters and to the story itself.
Absolutely. The place, I mean, it reminds me of, you know, Bergman never left Sweden to do, you know, and again, the culture, the rich culture of Seattle. Is there a personality of Seattle? I mean,
I think there is. I mean, and I never know if it's going to come across, but people who have seen like Touchy Feely or even Hump Day, I mean, there's not a lot of exteriors in Hump Day, but people are like, it feels so Seattle, and I think it's got to be because of the culture, you know, the sense of the way people are and how they are with each other and stuff. I don't know, but yeah, it's something that and you know, it's so lovely for me to be able to live where I work. And there's this wonderful filmmaking community up there. So I can hire all of my key, you know, department heads. They're all local hires. They're all wonderful people. And we've made little micro-budget movies together, and they've been really loyal to me. And then, you know, Laggies was the first multi-million-dollar movie I had, and I was able to give them full departments and, you know, toys and bells and whistles. And it was just so great to see what they could do, you know. So, yeah, it's been, I'd like to continue doing that if I can.
There was another question that I asked, because I'm going to go back to my Bergman, but he feels that directing is all about trying to make sense of your childhood, and that all of his films were about that. And again, because you shoot in Seattle, is there ever an element of that in your work?
You know, I don't know if it's so much my childhood as different. Well, and so, you know, I feel like half of my films are from the inside out, and half of them are more like I'm a sort of sociologist on Mars or something, you know. My Effortless Brilliance, my second film, Hump Day, are very firmly in the, you know, they really are, the protagonists are men, and they're men relating to men without women around. And so for me, it was an opportunity to kind of almost be a fly on the wall, because both of them were improvised. The dialogue was totally improvised, and I could not have written the dialogue of those films because it's so specific to them, and the characters were built. You know, I collaborated with the actors to build those characters for and with those actors, you know. And so I felt like this privileged sort of, again, kind of fly on the wall, you know, gaining access to this hidden world, this world that is normally hidden from me. My first feature film and Touchy Feely, on the other hand, and Laggies were all very much more, you know, I could draw from my own life and my own experience, and as a female, and as, you know, and somebody who's gone through depression, with Touchy Feely, and somebody who's, all these different aspects of myself. So yeah, I come at the work from different angles, but psychology and the question of the self and the way that the self changes over time, the way that we think we have an idea of who we think we are, and then we have these moments where we're faced with who we actually are, and they don't line up, and you have to you have a little crisis. Like that can happen at any age, and so those are the sort of who am I is the, and how we change in relationship to other people,
Right.
So Hump Day, he's very different. Mark Duplass's character is very different with his friend than he is with his wife, than he is at this party with all these cool people, and that is just, it's endlessly fascinating to me.
Again,
and
secrets.
And secrets, yeah.
Was there any residual after effects? So many times, when you act in a movie and you learn so much, and for the two actors playing that scene, which is obviously a very challenging scene when you're in, even though you're going to talk about it and you're going to do it. I mean, when you get there to shoot something, you have to be very vulnerable. And was there any kind of, again, what were the discussions that were taking place with the actors, and were there any revelations for them?
Specific, which
In Hump Day. With the
hotel room?
Post the hotel room.
Well, that was a really interesting experiment, formal exercise, that making of that movie. We shot the entire thing in order, which was an incredible gift. I mean, it's really hard to do that most times with most scripts, because you usually are going to be shooting your locations all at the same time and so on. But I was able to get access to this one house because a friend of mine just gave it to me for 2 weeks. And so we could come and go, so we could go to all the different locations and shoot everything in order, which was spectacularly great because, there were a couple of times when I had this outline, all the dialogue was improvised, so I had this outline and I knew what was going to happen in every scene. And there were a couple of times when we would get to doing that scene and the actors were like, I'm not believing it. We have it in the outline, this is what's supposed to do, and I'm supposed to react this way, and I'm not feeling it. And if I'm not feeling it, the audience isn't going to feel it. And truth was the thing that was driving us all, And so we shifted it, And then because we hadn't shot the next scene, we were able to shift that scene to make up for it. It was just spectacular. But the very last part of that movie, which takes place, it's almost a quarter of the movie, I think, takes place in the hotel room. We didn't know what was going to happen in the hotel room. That was the one thing we left. And so I sort of said, you guys know, you're living in these characters and you've lived through this whole story, and I'm going to trust you to really play out the scene like these guys would, it really would. And so we did it in chunks, we didn't do it all like one take because there were several like sort of mini scenes within this, night that they spend. And we checked in at 7 at night and checked out at 9 in the morning. We had the next room over to do the DIT, and and everybody was like sacking out. But there's actually a behind the scenes clip of Mark actually falling asleep in the middle of a take at 3:30 in the morning. But yeah, and at the end of it, the really interesting thing was that Josh and Mark were convinced that we didn't have it. They're like, well, you'll come down to LA. We have to leave. We have a hard out. You come down to LA. We'll reshoot it. And I was like, no, it's in there. We're good. They were like, no, you don't have it. And I was like, no, don't worry, guys. It's all taken care of. But I started as an editor, and I don't think that I could work in that improvisatory way if I hadn't started as an editor, because I'm sort of clocking as they go, Mm-hmm. Okay, it's in there. It's in there somewhere. I know it's in there, and then if there's a section that it's like, I don't have this one section, and we'll like dive into that one section. But yeah, so that scene in particular was we sort of took it chunk by chunk and just let it rip.
And were you surprised by the reaction? Of course, this was the reaction because it was obviously a great success at Sundance.
Yeah, it was sort of the Cinderella story that year in 2009. People were so sweet about that film and really, I don't know, advocated for it, and there was a lot of buzz about it. And it was a huge, it was a surprise. It was the third film, my third film, and the third film I tried to get into Sundance. I had my first time in Sundance, and I remember submitting it and thinking to myself, well, if they don't take this one, I give up. This is as good as,
Stamped.
it's really funny.
Controversial.
But I don't know, I was so proud of it, and I was hoping that they would see something in it, you know. And but I didn't know it would be such a, you know, a life changer for
Is
me.
is Sundance just the most important thing? I don't want to say most important thing for a filmmaker because there's so many. There's Slam Dance and
Well, I mean, Lena Dunham never went to Sundance. She, you know, Tiny Furniture was at South by Southwest, and you know, the rest is history. I mean, it's not for everybody, but it was a life changer for me. I mean, that was after Hump Day was there. That was when I suddenly had reps asking to represent me, and I was like, well, I don't know. I kind of like part-time teaching and making movies on my summer breaks. I have it pretty good up here, you know. I never thought I'd be able to make a living doing what I'm doing, and now I can. And it really is because of, I mean, it really is Sundance changed that for me.
and Touchy Feely was the film that you made after Hump Day. Was that the next film?
No,
or-
Your Sister.
Oh, so your sister.
Yeah,
Okay.
Your Sister, and then Touchy Feely, and then Laggies.
So your sister then is about. I was doing a little bit of research again about your postpartum feeling depressed.
No,
or-
that was Touchy Feely.
Oh, that was Touchy Feely.
Yeah, not
Getting them all.
postpartum, but
That's
just
why I thought of it as a trilogy. I was watching.
Yes, you saw them.
call them?
They're starting to meld. Yeah, no, Touchy Feely was that was a film that really was extremely personal to me, and a film I just I had to make, and it didn't have a kind of a sexy hook to it, you know, a high concept the way that that Hump Day had, and I didn't know if anybody would watch it. But I really had to make it. Like, I really had to make it. And it's funny, it has a fan base that is probably smaller than Hump Day and Your Sister, but ardent. Like, people who love it and connect with it really connect with it. And it's just always so moving to me when they come to me and say, oh my God, this film meant so much to me. I'm so glad you made it, because it's always like, oh, really? Yeah, that's so nice, because I kind of made it for myself.
Well,
and then I was like, okay, you know, and I was like, I'm not going to read any reviews of it. I just have to make this movie. It had to get out of me. It was interesting.
what I loved about his performance was, again, this cathartic experience he has, but he's not like jumping down the, you know, it's not like, it doesn't turn into a musical comedy. It's a very quiet revelation. Yeah. And that's, to me, that's very much captures, you know, the human experience.
Well, one of the main characters of that film is Josh Pais, who is somebody that you'd recognize, even if you don't know his name, you'd probably recognize him because he's been in so many small supporting character roles in his career over the last few decades. And I think this was the biggest part that he'd ever been given in Touchy Feely. And I just thought he was a brilliant actor, and I was so excited to give him a role that he could really like sink his teeth into. And I think he just killed it. And putting him on screen with Allison Janney is one of my proudest achievements to date.
Yeah, they have a great, you know, obviously a great chemistry, but you're never afraid to be. It's quiet, you know. That's what I like. It's very quiet.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of negative space, a lot of pauses. They're different kinds of characters. They're not bantery like the Mark Duplass kind of mold. They're inarticulate. You know, Ellen Page's character plays Josh's daughter, and they're just holding a lot in, you know, and that's a kind of a character it's a really difficult character to portray cinematically, and one I was really interested to, you know, explore.
I thought it was the saddest of all the films, and again, it reminded me. It had like a kind of a wasp quality to it, like people who don't, you know, I'm Italian, so I'm very out there, but people who, again, Josh, he just seems so sad. Like his job seemed sad. Being a dentist just seemed, I mean, it was.
Well,
no, it was.
Yeah, he's very bound. It's true. And his sister Rosemary DeWitt is a massage therapist, and he's a dentist, and they're doing these jobs that are, you know, you're so intimate with strangers. You know, I mean, somebody opening their mouth and you going in there, or somebody getting naked and you rubbing them. I mean, it's a really intimate thing, and yet they have these intimacy issues emotionally. You know, yeah, I just thought that was fascinating.
And was that something that, again, came from any sort of personal experience, or you just thought it would be an interesting character study?
Yeah, you know, they're two. I'd actually been developing a character along similar lines with Josh for a couple of years. We had met each other and we were mutual admirers, and so we were like, we have to work together. And we had been talking about a character sort of loosely that became this one, but for a whole other movie. And then I also had this idea for a massage therapist that loses her ability to touch people, becomes suddenly repulsed by skin. And when I worked with Rosemary, I was like, oh, you're that person, you have to play that role. And so I pitched it to her. And so as soon as I started developing the film about this massage therapist, I realized, oh, this would be a really interesting juxtaposition. And so I brought in the Josh character. So those two characters, it's an ensemble cast, but those two characters were built specifically for those two actors.
And working with Rosemary, is that offensive to say she's your alter ego, or
I'll
just
take
'cause
that.
you've
No.
used her?
Yeah, no, she's
Like, I'm going to make you do this
yeah,
this time.
exactly.
Is that
Totally
what
I
it
did?
It doesn't. I mean, sometimes an alter ego is not so much you, but you get to experience.
Exactly. It's true. But
things
yeah,
with
there
her.
were things I did make her recreate that were totally plucked from my life. Like, this period of depression that I had where I would just find myself standing in a grocery store aisle staring at some toothpaste or something and just like crying. And I'm like, okay, here I am. Like, what the hell, And I thought there was something really poignant, but also really funny about those moments too. I made her recreate all of those. So I don't think she had nearly as much fun doing that role as she did with Your Sister Sister. But it was territory that I was very grateful that she was willing to explore with me.
And she stepped in. You had again, just for a filmmaker, tremendous drama that you've lost your leading actor a few days before you're going to shoot it. She stepped in
Your Sister Sister.
In Your Sister Sister. So that must have been.
Yeah, that was my war story with that film. I'd spent 8 months developing that those three characters with Emily Blunt, Mark Duplass, and another actress. And then 3 days before we were going to shoot, I lost the other actress. And I thought, well, that's the end of the movie. I mean, there's no way we can do it. And it was really awful because people were already, they were already rigging the lights, and they were up there at the cabin and on the island. I mean, it was all underway. Oh, it was crazy. It was totally crazy. And then we just started calling. I remember it was my co-producer at the time, Megan Griffiths, was like, well, what if we could get Samantha Morton, like, what if we could get some actors, new, and thinking of an actor that I would really, like, oh, well, maybe, But it didn't even occur to me because I developed this role with this person, and I just didn't think it was possible to transfer it. And that was the big lesson with that movie was, you can recast. Oh, my God, you can recast. Because we'd created this huge Bible of a backstory, and I was able to just share that with her, and get on the phone with her for a couple hours and send her the document, and then she just jumped in. It was amazing. Wow. She was my angel.
That's a really wonderful. I really enjoyed watching that film, and I loved Emily Blunt. A very unexpected performance for Emily Blunt. And what was it like working with her?
Oh, it's incredible. She is one of the funniest people I've ever met, and she brought so much of herself to the role. And I remember seeing salmon fishing in the Yemen at TIFF the same year that Your Sister Sister was there. We saw them in the same day, and it was like, oh, she's so charming and so great in this film. And then I saw her in Your Sister Sister, and I was just like, oh my God, but she's really great in my film because she's so vulnerable. Like it's her, and she's such a fascinating person. So yeah, it's something about improvising, and it was why I wanted her to be able to be British in the film, because I didn't want her to have an American accent while she was improvising. And she just threw herself into it, and yeah.
And there's a great sense. I'm just going to, since we're on Your Sister Sister, there's just a great sense of naturalism, but also, everyone, there's humor in it. And so again, I'm just sort of curious, the atmosphere on the set, and some scenes are improvised or some scenes are scripted. How did that work?
Yeah, my second and third films, My Effortless Brilliance and Hump Day, were completely, I don't think I wrote a single word of dialogue. But with Your Sister Sister, because the actresses didn't have as much, they weren't as comfortable with improvisation, I wrote a script. Mm-hmm. I wrote like 70 or 80 pages of a script. And the idea was, read the scene once and then just kind of forget about it, or just don't, you can use it as a jumping off point, but feel free to just throw it out the window. And it kind of changed depending on who was in the scene. So if it was a scene with Mark, who's a veteran improviser and who loves to just go off the beaten track, he would like just literally go off the beaten track, and they would kind of follow, whoever was playing with him would just sort of follow along. And he knew that, he always is acting for the edit. Like he's just giving you as many different choices and options, so every take would be really different because we had cross coverage. We had a camera on him and a camera on the other actor, and we'd be able to put it together later. When it was the two actresses, they would stick more closely to what I wrote, but they would change the order, they'd change the wording a little bit, they were more subtle. So I was able to get two shots, and just have them play out the whole scene because they were used to shaping a scene, and having the arc of it. It was really fascinating to see their approach to improvisation. They were still improvising, but it was just a little bit different. And it had its own beautiful quality to it.
And are you lighting the entire room when you go there?
Yeah, we had lights set up so that we could basically kind of, you're definitely compromising a little bit when you're saying you can go anywhere in the room, Usually there was some no-fly zone, or if you could please stay out of this corner where you will not be lit at all, that would be so awesome, And a lot of times they're pretty stationary, they're sitting or they're kind of in one place, so you could make it pretty, but it would take minor adjustments. So the normal shooting day on an average feature film, you're like shooting maybe an hour and a half out of a 12 or 14-hour day, and it was basically the opposite kind of shooting ratio, So we were able to get that film shot in 12 days because we'd be adjusting lights for a couple of hours total.
You shot that movie in 12 days.
12 days, yeah. And it was going to be 14, but we lost 2 because of, there's like a crazy light back there. Is that a signal?
No, because we're gonna be opening it up to questions pretty soon. But we still have another 5 minutes.
Okay, good.
I wish we had more time. I'm fascinated.
So because Rosemary was working on a TV show, she played Toni Collette's sister on what's the movie?
Tara,
United States of Tara. And so she had to fly, but she got no time off because she would fly down in a little airplane to SeaTac and then the bigger airplane to LA. So every day she was working. She'd have to do her days on the TV show, and then she'd come back up, and we lost 2 days of shooting. And I didn't sleep at all the entire time because I thought, oh my God, I have this beautiful cast and this incredible location, and and I only have them for this little window, and if I can't get it in the can, I'm going to kill myself. It was terrifying. And I did, and we didn't have 17-hour days. We had you were asking about the kind of vibe on the set, and it's incredibly important to me to have a very emotionally safe set, especially when people are improvising, because they're constantly falling on their face, and they have to be able to feel that they can do that and that it's okay. They're risking. They're trying. I mean, there are times when I'd say, "Okay, great, we got that. Let's move on to the next scene," and they'd look at me just like, "Really? Like that felt like watching paint dry. Like that was horrible, And I'm no. It's in there. I know it's in there, and don't worry. I won't let a second of anything that doesn't work show up on screen, And there's it's like looking for the little nuggets of goodness, in the swamp of.
Well, you come from a documentary film background.
I've done some.
Help?
I come from an editing background, and I have done some documentary work, but I never really did Maisel Brothers style. I mean, love those kinds of films, but I've never actually had to do that kind of years and years of working that way and editing that way. But it is editing improvised dialogue is. Narrative films is very much like editing docs.
That must be very tough, though. I mean,
it is, and it's terrifying too. It's really strenuous and stressful to be writing on set. But when it works, it's incredible. I mean, because you can get this kind of immediacy. And I mean, there's this scene where there's a scene in Your Sister where I said to Rosemary off to the side, I was like, you have to say something that's going to really embarrass Emily. And she did, and she said something that I didn't know what she's like, I got it. She didn't tell me what it was. She didn't tell, and Emily blushes like beet red on screen when Rose says this thing, and it's so great because that's what that's sort of the quintessence of what improvisation can bring.
Do you ever feel, I swear this is going to end just because I'm fascinated. I'm getting a visual of does the crew ever want to interrupt? And because if it feels so fresh and.
Well, I'm the biggest.
Yeah,
like the Hump Day, the scene that you saw, I was the one holding the camera at the end where it goes down to their bellies. I was the second, camera op. But some of the stuff that they did in that room was so incredible. And again, it's just pure improvisation. We had no idea what they were going to be doing. And they kiss and they do all these things. They say these things. And I'm like, don't laugh, don't ruin the shot. It was so hard because, you're
so immediate.
It's so immediate, yeah.
Speaking of remakes, I was thinking as you were talking that you could do a follow-up to Hump Day now that do they go back or what? I was very curious. I wanted to see them in 10 years.
They ever see themselves, ever see each other
they
again?
They regret not.
A lot of people have asked me right after your sister came out, let's do. I think you should create a TV series, of like what happens afterwards. Or, yeah, well, you can do that.
Definitely. That's all great. Okay. Well, I'm going to. Ask some. Does anyone have some questions? I believe there's a microphone up there that might be easier, or I can also field them. Where shall we start? Start there. Ladies first.
Okay,
yes?
great. I'm the first one. My name's Andy. I am a writer-actor. Recently got roped into producing, so I'm learning the ropes on that. My question to you is in regards to shooting locations. Infrastructure versus community. I'm currently working on a script. The protagonist is a gay woman. However, that's not the main cornerstone of the film. Obviously, there could be a lot of community involvement in regards to financing, just getting it out there. Seattle, obviously you have a preference in shooting, would seem to have more of a community feel, community involvement, especially for female filmmakers. Would you suggest working in a city like Los Angeles, where it has the infrastructure and the industry, versus Seattle, that is, very community-driven, especially with something as indie film?
Well, yeah, it depends a little bit on the scale. There's sort of a sweet spot in Seattle and in Washington State for
modified low.
Exactly, and micro budget. It's a great place to make films, scrappy little films with a really passionate community support system, for sure. If you're going to do something on a larger scale, right now we're fighting we have a really competitive incentive program, but the fund itself is too small, and so we're trying to get it expanded so we can bring more work, more TV, more films, in a larger scale of films, of projects there. But again, it depends. If it's a smaller film, it's a great place to make work, and hopefully soon it'll be great for medium to large to, I don't know about Spider-Man 5, but, I don't know if I want that film there. But, it's come on up.
Okay, great, good to hear, thank you.
All right, sir.
Hi, Lynn. You make amazing films,
Thank you.
first of all, and I know they don't have crazy budgets, but do you still have the hard time finding financing that everybody else does, or have you got a model that works pretty well now?
Well, it's shifted. The first couple films that I made, I literally made without any investors at all. Because I come from an experimental filmmaking background, so I was very comfortable. I was not comfortable with the sort of idea of film as business, but I was very comfortable with the idea of film as art. And so I wrote grants and I passed the hat as well. I had these house fundraising parties. I was only trying to raise $20,000 or whatever, $20,000, $30,000. But it was all, I didn't have to give any of it back because I got, fiscal sponsorship through local arts organizations, and then gave people, they were able to get deductions. It was tax deductible donations instead of investment. And then at a certain point, I think it was Your Sister, my fourth film, that we shifted that model to an investor model, but it was sort of a modified investor model. The people that we found, my producer Stephen Shart found, were all folks who were really interested in making, being a part of making art and weren't worried about, I mean, we felt like, well, you definitely make your money back plus 20%, but I don't know if you'll make a huge profit beyond that. And they weren't looking to make an enormous profit. So they were totally hands off. They were, it was heaven. It was basically heaven. I mean, you're working, again, small budgets, but this was now 150,000, something like that, in that kind of realm. And then, Laggies was my first experience in the multi-million dollars, and it was definitely a whole different ball game. It was, when you get to that level, suddenly you have a lot of hand-wringing and a lot of, people who completely understandably are worried about their investment of several $1 million. And so there's just a lot more, strain and stress and energy that has to be spent kind of like, okay, it's all right, this is, going to be fine or whatever, I don't know. And just, addressing their notes and explaining why you're not going to go with half of them or 90% of them or whatever, and so it was a whole different process. And just finding those people, I mean, when I got on the set of Laggies, I was pinching myself because I really, after the 2-3 years it took to get there, oh, we're really making this? Because I just didn't think it was going to happen, Yeah, and it's one of the reasons that the creative control with those smaller budgets and the less stress and less people kind of hovering and, it's such a wonderful thing. So your canvas may not be as big and, you have to sort of make smaller scaled down stories. But I would always like to continue to be able to make those smaller stories just because it's such a intimate and, creatively free way to work.
Great.
Hi, Lynn. I met you at the ArcLight, I believe, after a Laggies Q&A once. I was just curious, when you were talking about the script that, this guy was like, I need to modify it for the French version, and then you were like, actually, what you've done is masculinize certain sections. So what were those sections? What were some of those changes? Because at the moment, I'm doing a feature film where I commissioned a script, and then being a guy, I was like, actually, the point of view is too masculine. So, you need to make it a little more asexual. So I'm just curious to hear
some of those
Yeah.
differences.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the very opening scene of Hump Day is a loving couple who are really fond of each other and have been together, it's sort of a long-term relationship, and they're married. And they, in my version, they are, they're sort of kissing in bed, and you think it might be moving towards sex, and then they kind of give each other. One of them's like, says something, and the other one's like, what is it? And he's like, I'm just so tired. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm tired too. And I just adore you. Thank you so much. Okay, but tomorrow, for sure, we're totally gonna do it.
Right.
And it really says a lot about the characters and where they're at sexually and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So the opening of his film, they are going at it like
Ew.
bunnies, and it is the hottest sex. It's like his wife is this underwear model. She's this, anyway. And so it's coitus interruptus when the doorbell rings and the buddy shows up. But I mean, she's egging him on. I mean, it's the crazy hot sex.
Right.
And so.
Gotcha. There you have it.
different setup for the characters, launching point. And it affects everything, So yeah, that was a big one. France, so French. That was crazy French.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question. As an indie filmmaker, you have to wear so many different hats to get your projects done, and I wondered how you balance your day job working for TV and find time to do your projects, and how you've done that over the years and made so many projects, made so many films come to fruition.
Yeah, so I started doing, my first TV job was about 1.5 years after Hump Day came out in 2000. So Hump Day was premiered at Sundance in 2009, and about 1.5 years later, I did Mad Men in 2010 in the summer. And that was right when I stopped, or maybe it was a little before that, but I had been teaching part-time. That was kind of my bread and butter, and I didn't suddenly have time to do that anymore. And the thing that's great about I love a lot of things about TV, but that first gig was a longer stint. I came down to LA and lived here for a couple months because I shadowed another director since it was my first TV gig. And then I stayed on for my full thing, pre-production, production, and then the edit as well. And so it was like a long 2.5 months of my life. But after that, like New Girl, I started getting these half-hour sitcoms, and it's like 9 days. It's you're in and out, and so you prep for 4 days, 5 days, and then you shoot for 5 days, and then I would come home and do edits. Sometimes I stick around and do my edits in town, but sometimes I'll just do it remotely, and you're done. Like there's no, it's really fast. So that's one of the reasons that I like it, because it's very intense while I'm doing it, but then it's over, and I can sort of squeeze it in while I'm developing other projects. So it works pretty well. And the thing I really like, one of the things I really like about it, I always learn a lot. I was telling this to Illeana backstage. I always learn a ton, because I find that I don't know if I'm the only one who does this. I hope I'm not. But when I write my own projects, I tend to shy away from the things that scare me. Children, dogs, I don't know. I stay, stunts, things like that. And so I'm just given this script, and I just have to do it, whatever it is. I go, okay, roll up my sleeves and figure out how to do that. So I always learn so much and gain a lot of confidence, and working with different crew. And I mean, it's just I always learn so much. And I get to be on set, which is my favorite place to be. So even when I was making movies at the fastest pace, it was still there'd be like 12, 14 months in between times when I'd be on set. And then when I'd be on set, it would be like 10 or 12 days. So I like to be on set more. So I'm so grateful that I get to do TV work, because it really keeps my directing muscles flexed. But I still feel like I have enough time in between to, I don't know, just sort of balance it out.
And then just to bring it back to what we were talking about at the beginning, do you think as a female director in TV that you're able to infuse anything like, I'm going to do this a little bit different than I think a man would do it?
I mean, I'm really channeling the showrunner's vision. That's what I'm there to do. And I enjoy that. I really like just being a part of a crew. You're kind of like the captain of the ship, but you're not the admiral of the fleet, right? You're sort of, you're trying to, it's the exact same job. Like you still have to make all these decisions about what's in the frame, and is the ashtray going to be here, especially, a show like Mad Men, like, every single visual, but mostly, you're trying to find the shape of the scene with the actors. And even though they know their backstory and they know their characters so well, you still are in the moment with them trying to figure out how to unlock that scene. It's the same job, but you are channeling somebody else's vision for the whole creative thing. So that's what I feel like my job is, and the most important thing I feel like I bring is a decisiveness and also a collaborative nature. Like I really heavily, collaborate with the crew and with the actors, because they really know the show, inside and out.
I would imagine that sometimes they would, just based on a person's work and their movies, they think, oh no, I'm going to get down with Lynn. Like, does anyone ever, I'm going to get really intimate now.
I'm very comfortable with, for instance, New Girl, some of the most, Jake Johnson and Zooey Deschanel, when you can cross-cover them and let them open up and improvise in a scene. I'm really comfortable with improvisation and working that way, and knowing when I'm clocking as an editor, do I have everything I need in there, And so it's nice to have that skill set, and they're comfortable with me doing, they sort of trust me to direct that kind of a scene. So, yeah, but it's always got to be within the container of the show. Yeah.
But I think it's important for filmmakers out there, again, that you've established your voice in your films, and so therefore you're very hireable as a director, that you have technical skills, but as you said, you're going to bring to it, they'll be good at improv, or so you've got a kind of a bag of tricks as a director to bring into a project, which I think is important. Yes, sir.
Thank you for taking me. Bobby Lee Jr. here. It's funny, nice to see you in person.
Hi.
Hi. From we go way back, and my effortless brilliance, I would say up until Touchy Feely, obviously you've created this brand, this sort of feeling to your projects. Even with like a lack of music, and you put two people in front of each other and you put them in these awkward situations. And I feel like when I went and I saw Laggies, it to me it had a little bit of a different. obviously your biggest budgeted project, a little different feel to it. Much more music, much more even the way Chloe delivers dialogue. It's a little bit more mainstream. Can you talk about obviously having a bit bigger budget and how to preserve your brand and your thought process going into, okay, let me take on this project, you especially directing it, not necessarily writing it, and how you go about saying, okay, I'll take this on and what it will do to my brand as an artist.
Yeah, no, Laggies was definitely a brand new thing for me because of all the things you just mentioned. I mean, the budget, but also the main thing was that it was the first film I didn't write. And so it was a producer and writer coming to me and saying, would you attach yourself to this? We would love for you to direct this. And when I read it, it was sort of like, wow, I didn't write this, but I feel like there's a simpatico between me and this writer, and our voices were interested in the same kinds of characters. It's a similar wheelhouse. Not that I was going to say I didn't write it, but I feel like I could have. That's not really true. It's distinctly Andrea Siegel's voice, the script, but I don't know. I just felt a real kinship with her. And then when there were a few things about the script when I first attached myself that I wanted to shift, and she was so ego-free about taking my notes and really, and she was just so collaborative and easy to work with. And so it was a brand new experience. I'd never worked with another writer before, and my intention was to turn it into a Lynn Shelton film. I realized in the end, it really was it's the merging of our two voices. I mean, it has to be, because there are lines of dialogue that I never could have written, and I just, I get chills. It's like, oh, it's so beautiful, and what she did and where she goes with these characters. And then I come in and sort of put my stamp on it. And there were some things that I actually did go in and actually change, or I would ask the actors to come up with a different. But mostly it was all Andrea's script. So it was a big question for me. How much would this film feel like a film of mine? But it was a grand experiment, and I wanted to see if I could do it and what it would be like. And the main thing is just that I felt such a personal relationship to that script and to that territory, and I felt very passionate about it. So it was easy to go on that journey with that particular project. I don't know how else to say. So it's kind of it's hard for me to judge. I do ask other people, like, does it feel like one of my movies? And a lot of times people will say what you say, but a lot of times people say, oh yeah, no, it's definitely yours. But it definitely has I think it has a slightly different flavor as well. And
Thank
that's
you.
kind of why.
An actor that really pops in the movie is Sam Rockwell, and
God.
he's just so.
That guy.
Well, what is it you like? He's a wonderful actor. Obviously, we all know Sam Rockwell. Yes, just a great actor. Doesn't
Always
work.
improves every project he's in.
He's so eccentric,
He's incredible.
and he's just pops off of the screen. But again, in your movie, it's a slightly different character for him.
Very different. Yeah.
He's the romantic lead.
He's the romantic lead, and he's the father of a teenage daughter, and yeah, it was new. It was like new territory for him
He's
in a
not
lot of
trying
different
to
ways.
hurt,
I know, exactly. But he has the thing that I loved about his take on that role was there is this texture to it. I think it could have been a flatter character and a character who's a little bit more just sort of on the page, on the surface. But there is this darkness and this sort of like melancholy and this, the disappointment of life is heavy on his shoulders. There's this something he brings to it, and then just the rhythms, his sort of interesting, I hate the word quirky, but there's a specificity to it that he really, really brings. And then he and Kira have such a great chemistry. And Chloe too. I mean, the thing that I really loved about working with those actors, that cast, and I mean, this is, I've had great luck with all of the actors that I've ever worked with, but I was very impressed with how open-hearted everybody was. I mean, you really have to have such vulnerability. You've never met a lot of, sometimes they've met before, but in all of these circumstances of my films, they've really mostly never worked together, ever met before, and yet they just come with this such love and such openness, and and then I'm trying to give them the same playground, the same, so I really carefully choose my crew, for instance, to make sure that there's not going to be any toxicity at all on set, because I need it to be a very loving and vulnerable, a place that you can feel safe and vulnerable. And when you do that, like that's where chemistry is just sort of naturally emerges. It's such a lovely thing.
It's funny to hear you say that, because so many times in doing the Trailblazing show and listening to commentary, every woman director said, "This movie was made with a lot of love. I tried, I put a lot of love." And again, I think that that's something that that a female director says. If a director creates an environment on a set, and obviously it comes from the director that you are creating that environment. We're going to wrap it up. Just my last question. I've got to ask, what projects are you working on now?
Well, I have a project that I'm really excited about that's a This American Life story. And it's called The Incredible Case of the PA Moms, and it was an episode that they aired several years ago, and it was one of the most popular episodes. And they asked me if I would listen to it and would like to, be interested enough to pitch how I would do a story, how I would make a movie out of it. And my friend Megan Griffiths and I co-wrote the script, and we're putting it together now. And I'm very excited about it because it's a whole new genre for me, and yet it's still like it's a real story with crazy larger-than-life characters, and there's suspense, and there's thrills, and there's nefarious and there's like layer after layer of all this crazy sort of noir. It's just this nutty story, but I'm just dying to make it. So hopefully that'll come together in 2016, and yeah, and then I actually have like suddenly I've just had this creative explosion of all these little ideas. So what I like to do is have like a back pocket movie, like a little tiny movie, even if it's a short maybe this time, I don't know, but I need to, if sometimes you get pulling these bigger movies together and then they get pushed for one reason or another, maybe it's an actor schedule or, and so I'm kind of want to be at the ready with other little ideas, because I have to get on the set of my own film. It's been almost 2.5 years since I've been on set. The set of Laggies was my last one, and it's time, so yeah.
Well, it's been, thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Talking to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And
Illeana.
continued success.
Thanks, and to you.